Change you for the worse?
I don't think it can change you for the worse, but I think that if you've had negative introductions, if you've had people who didn't understand it as you began this conversation as a science, but who think of it as a style, then they're looking at you to be a knockoff or approximation to what they consider the ideal is. That can cripple people.
So what I mean is it the movements themselves that build character, or is it something else that comes first? So where is...
I hear you. I think that what builds character is the devotion to something that you've chosen, like a marriage, where you say, I'm giving myself to this. So the moment you give yourself to something and you have a goal, you're climbing the mountain. I've given myself and I have a goal. You're climbing the mountain. When you're climbing the mountain, there's the concomitant enemy who's coming up with you. And so during your process, there'll be points, just like in a marriage, there's the honeymoon. And then the honeymoon's over. There's a point where the honeymoon's over and we really have to confront each other.
Right.
And then there's no sugar. And then we have to do what? We have to endure. People don't teach that, but it's necessary to change the character. And it's supposed to happen. Like people with careers, they'll talk about this was a bitter period when it was coming. I just hated it, but it had to happen because this was the resultant revelation of that friction.
Right, but you could do that in anything, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So ballet is just one way to live, is that right?
You're right. You're right. If you dedicate your life to devotion to the peanut, it can transform your life, just as it did, I forget the name now, not Booker T. Yeah, Booker T. Washington. Yeah, any kind of single-minded devotion is an alchemy.
Right.
Whether it's to kids, your children, something single focus changes you. You're right.
So is there anything about the physicality of dance that makes it somehow more
I think
or
that,
less or...
there's something about physical culture when there's a alignment with the spine that's healthy. When your chest is open and you're breathing deeply and you're sweating, which is cleansing, there's also a radiance that comes. Mm-hmm. You can see it, from stretching and getting rid of toxins and being committed to excellence. It's transforming.
Yeah. Well, I'm aware of time, and I want to give everybody else a chance to participate in this. So are there people that have questions that they'd like to ask? Sue, you're...
Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful class.
Thank
you. I'm so struck by the word generosity that you use constantly, and it reminds me that one of the meanings of charis, or grace, in the Greek term, is give.
Yes.
And it seems to me to apply to what's going on in class there.
Yes.
That you are not only receiving a gift of grace, but you're also giving. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the secret that generous giving people often don't share is that you get so much more back when you're giving, and it feels good to give. It feels good. There have been times where I've been in situations where the demand was so great and so constant, my logical mind said, this is ridiculous. This is asking too much. This is not normal. But when pushed to get over myself, there's more expansion. Every single time that I thought this was too much. And so that's what life is telling you. Your possibilities, your capacity is much more than you know. So go there. And when you have someone in front of you who sees that, because we're human beings, right? So our capacity is unlimited. We can make the most heinous actions or the most sublime, which history has shown us again and again, and we make a choice. We make a choice. Mussolini had a brilliant mind. There was a woman.
Yeah, I don't know how to choose. Yeah. And then we'll move over here.
I experienced such a pureness and a calmness from your dancers. It just sort of exuded from them amidst even being like physically exerted. And it was really touching to me. Is there something that you look for, let's say when you're hiring another dancer, is there something that you look for in them, that something that stands out to you that allows you to, something that touches you that allows you to pick them out of the crowd and say, I want to work with that person, that spirit, that body?
Yeah, there was Eugene, put your hands up. This Eugene, and when she came to audition about 7 years ago, we had this audition where it was just ridiculously packed. And there was this girl who wasn't really trying. And there were all these people who were incredibly competent, but they were, to be blunt, they were kind of knockoffs. And you're looking for an original. And what is an original? Someone who is sunk in themselves. They've begun a dialogue with themselves. They've begun to ask the important questions. What am I here for? What is life about? What do I want to make happen? That dialogue has to begin. Or what are we working with? Because the artist's principal concern is statement. What is being said? And so people have something to say, have done some introspection. And you can tell that by the way that they move. It's also important to look at people who aren't trying to please you, but they've begun a musical dialogue, an internal conversation with themselves, and they have a very strong point of view and want to bring something to the art instead of thinking, what am I going to get? They're bringing something, so they have that already. That smells interesting. So she wasn't trying. And I could tell she was trained, and I thought, what's up with her? And you know, and everyone was just, and she was like, and I said, aren't you going to even try? And I said, here, improvise, do something. And she improvised, and it was so sublime. It was an audition, but that night I put her on stage in a performance with the company to see if she would shine, if what her radiance was like. And she was beautiful, and she was hired.
Silas, yeah.
So my point is, it was who she was. You get me?
Alonzo, who was it that you felt helped you find that rich spiritual dimension to the work of ballet? Or was it an experience? Was it something in your childhood? Because you talk about it with such beauty, but that spiritual dimension of the work.
I think that ballet is loaded, it's replete. If you're talking about nonstop line, attendu, if you're talking about nonstop line, you're talking about eternity. So we're addressing big, huge issues. If you're saying that to receive information, you have to get out of the way, again, these are ascetic whispers about magnanimity. And when you see great dancers, there is such a depth of concentration that I think it's inspiring to, when you see where a dancer's gotten to a level where their body and themselves, they don't think of as the same. In the same way that Helen Keller said she was not liberated when she was this brilliant genius locked in a deaf, dumb, blind body. When she said she found out that her body wasn't herself, all the doors opened. But it's the same for all of us. We're all deaf, dumb, blind. Every single person in some aspect or degree. And so that, again, that internal cleansing, which is what real work is, it's a cleansing of debris so there's clarity. What are we talking about? You know, it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable. And so all of the metaphor that people, when there's a child and people say, oh, he's or she is not very talented, what does that mean? Most people, when they think talented, they're talking about a facile kind of physicality and an ease. But that's not really talent. It's really not. Talent is about 6 or 7 character traits. And when you see that person on fire, and everyone knows what that means. Well, what do you mean someone's on fire? You know what that means when you see them blazing. And so that's talent, and that's what you work with, regardless of the body type. So I think it's kind of unavoidable because what? People who are serious about their lives want to change their lives. And they feel that where I am now, I do not want to be here when I close my eyes to the world. I want to have multiplied my talents. I want to have magnified my giving. I want to have bloomed and blossomed. I don't want to stay one little kernel. The point of the seed is to bloom, and that's work. There's a gentleman here.
Yeah, you call it.
Oh, I'm
you
sorry.
Call it. No,
Go
you do
ahead.
it.
Yes, sir, in the white shirt.
Yeah.
I'm going to move into a slightly different topic. Jennifer, in her book, was not very sanguine about the future of classical ballet. I want you to comment on that, please.
Sorry, Alonzo.
No, not at all. I think that it's no different than saying, we're going to all die. We're destroying the planet. We're killing each other. The world is insane. But underneath, there are people who are changing the world by changing themselves. You're not going to see that on the 6 o'clock news. When I see evil perpetrated, does it horrify me? Absolutely. Do I want to do something? Yes. But where do I have to start? With me. Politicians, do I have greed and selfishness in me? Hell yes. So what do? I need to extract my own first before I do this. Has to start with the person. Oh, if we only had a different leader, if we don't. No, change yourself. That's where everything begins. And so there are these young lovers of ballet who are madly in love, and they're bringing new fruit, new flowers. They're coming. They're coming. Yes.
Thank you for the class. I had a question to ask you. Through your career, have you taken other forms of dance training or workshops? And if you have, has that influenced in the way you've been thinking and approaching your teaching ballet?
Yes, I have studied almost everything. I took Bharatnatyam with Balasari Saraswati. Yeah, all dance for me is informative, and there's a difference that's stark between the Eastern approach and the Western approach. In the Western approach, the idea is that the student or pupil is an empty cup, devoid of knowledge, and I'm going to fill that empty cup with information. In the East, and I'm saying in the East, but also in the West with that Eastern thinking, because East and West is really left brain, right brain, if you boil it down. You little kid have every damn thing you need. You're brilliant. There's some things in the way. Let's remove them so that you can recognize your brilliance. So there's nothing to feed, there's something to wake up because it's already in there. The teacher or the working artist wants to wake up the latent artist in the student. It's already there. So the environment has to be right. It has to be an environment of safety, an environment of trust, and an environment where you recognize you little people are brilliant. Let's build something. To bring a child into the world of law is very tricky without stripping them. And so it takes a particular kind of loving teacher who sees the uniqueness of an individual and brings that along when it brings them into formality and law without destroying them. Very tricky.
Maybe one more. Or are we pretty much?
There's a hand there.
One last one. Laura.
Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful class with us today, and thank you also to your dancers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your program at Dominican University, and whether you feel like being engaged with a university setting has impacted you as a choreographer and a teacher.
I think universities are like castles. The abundance of facility is one thing, but the idea of starting a school where artists could come and have a rigorous intellectual academic place to discover and play and work and achieve, as well as a super rigorous place for the other part of the intellect and art making coexist together was always a dream, and it's been about 10 or 11 years now, and Marina Hotchkiss is doing a brilliant, brilliant program. And so I love it. Yeah, education is everything, isn't it?
On that note, since we are a university program, we thank you all for coming, and let's thank Alonzo and the dancers.